Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my May wrap up. I have been dreading this just because my back is bad and I have some really chunky books that I all had to hold up. That thumbnail was really hard to get. But anyway, I think that I actually had a really good reading month in May. I'm a little surprised. Like, I did have 3 DNFs, but I think I had a really good time, and I feel like I found some new favorites, and I did start some new series, so I'm really excited for like the next books to come out or to read the next books, because I do have the books like of some of them that I have done, but I just haven't gotten to them yet. So I did read 12 books in May, which is really good for me, especially considering some of them were massively chunky. I will say one of them has taken me like 3 months to read, so I don't know if you can count as that as just being May, but I think I did read the majority of it in May. And 2 of them are actually EARCs, which I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. One of them I can't talk about that much because it is coming out in the future, so the publisher did say that they didn't want it to be discussed that much until the date comes out, so I will actually have a video for that one like separate of everything because it will be a follow-up for one of my previous reviews, so I'm really excited to talk about that one. And then I did have 3 DNFs. So let's just get into it. As usual, we're going to start with the DNFs. And I feel, I hate doing this because this also happened last month where I was in the middle of doing a book catch-up vlog. So I finished 2 books of that Illumicrate vlog, but I still haven't started Empire the Vampire because I'm terrified and I've been reading other things. So now I'm stuck doing a wrap-up with 2 of the books that are going to be in that vlog. So I'm not going to talk about them that much, and I probably won't give you my exact rating, although talking about the DNFs is going to ruin one of them. But you'll have to go watch that if you want more in-depth thoughts about it. So let's get into the DNFs. So first off, we have one that I was really disappointed about because it seemed like a really cool, like, horror, sci-fi, contemporary kind of book, and it is Camp Zero. Everyone seems to dislike this book. I just didn't like the writing. I thought it was really boring. And it took me forever to get through even like 20 pages of this book. So I decided, I think I got up to page 50, which is why I'm counting this as a DNF, because my rule for DNFing is if it's under 50 pages, I don't count it as a DNF. It's more like a taste test kind of thing. So then I won't talk about it. But I'm pretty sure, I think I got to like page 57 or something. I just did not enjoy this. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the writing style. So this is an unfortunate DNF for me. And then the next DNF was a really big surprise because this is a weird one to explain. This is a very weird one to explain. But I DNF Chain Gang AllStars. I actually got really far into this book. I got over 200 pages and I kept trying to push through it. But the writing style just did not work for me. It did not work for me whatsoever. And I think this author, this is like their debut book, but they have written other things before and they were novellas. And a couple of things that I've seen and that I also agree with is it almost felt like this book had a ton of different novellas like smashed into one book. So this book was really difficult to follow along with the chapters because there was like 5 or 6 or 7 different storylines all happening at the same time, and my brain could not comprehend all of that going on at once. And like we would be following, like there was definitely like a main plot line, and that was like the fights going on. So this is following the future and the American prison system and what this author believes the American prison system is kind of heading towards. And you know, I can't disagree because I have never liked the privatization of prisons. I think it's just asking for bad stuff to happen. And so this is kind of like the reimagining of what it's going to be like in the future. And it's taking hardened criminals who have over 25 years and they're allowed to sign up for a program called the Chain Gang AllStars, and it's hard sports, it's extreme sports basically, but they're killing each other, so it's gladiator, and they're sent in with weapons and they gain points the more they win, and they have to survive for I think 3 years, and then they'll get out. So of course they're going to sign up for it, especially the people who've been there for life, etc. But it's so brutal, and I would have liked it if it was just following like our gladiators and their lives, etc. But we followed too many of them. So we did have like our main ones, which is, who is it? Stacks, Loretta Thurwar and Hurricane Stax are like two main ones, and I would have loved the story if it had followed them, if we had got their backstory, if we had talked about some of the stuff going on the outside, but we were jumping around so much. It was jumping around so much to other characters, and it wouldn't introduce the characters, so I'd be reading it, and it would like jump all of a sudden to this one character and start talking about them and this bad stuff happening, and I was like, who is this? Like, who am I reading about? And sometimes it would be someone who'd already been in the book, but it wouldn't tell you who it was. So it was incredibly difficult to follow, and that kind of made me completely lose interest in the story. So I kind of wish this had been a novella about those two characters, and I think it would have worked a lot better. Something I absolutely loved in this book were the footnotes. Normally I'm like kind of iffy on footnotes. It depends kind of on the book. The footnotes in this were so good because they would talk about a subject in the book, in the prison system, and then it would go to the footnotes where it would talk sometimes about real cases, because I looked up every single real case the footnotes brought up, and I feel like it was such a great way to make the reader look into these social justice cases. And I didn't know about half of them. Like, there were a few that I had heard about, but I hadn't heard about a lot of them, and it turned into a deep dive with Google. So I enjoyed like a lot of this, but overall, I could not see myself pushing through another 200 pages, and that's why I kind of wish that it was a novella. But I did skim through the end to see what would happen, and I didn't love the ending either, so I'm kind of glad that I didn't push through. It just, the ending did not work for me either. So I think this had a lot of potential, but I think it was just not probably edited correctly. So that one makes me really, really sad. And this one came from Aardvark. This was my first month doing Aardvark, which was pretty cool. So this is kind of going to ruin the Illumicrate video, but I've got to bring it up here. So but I'm still going to be talking about Empire of the Vampire in that one, and hopefully finish that this month. So, She Who Became the Sun. Ugh. This one was such a disappointment. I think this was another DNF at about 150 pages. About 200. Yeah, I DNF'd this about 200 pages, and I really thought about pushing through this one, and I tried twice, but I lost all interest. The sad part is I really loved the beginning of this book. I thought it was written super well, but this is a historical fiction, and I don't really like historical fiction. My mind wanders. I have a hard time focusing. I have a hard time keeping track of what's happening. It's funny because all day I'll take a historical like fantasy book, but if there's no fantasy in it really, my brain does not do it. It just doesn't work. But I really enjoyed the beginning of it, and I think so it switches perspectives in here, and that's where it completely lost me. Once it switched perspectives and we were reading from another person, I had zero interest in the book anymore, and it was sticking like with that perspective. And even when it switched back to the original perspective, I just wasn't interested. So that was really sad, and this ended up being a very difficult DNF for me. Okay, moving on to the books that I actually read and I actually finished, which was really exciting because some of them are so good, and I'm just like really excited to talk about them. But if you have seen like all my videos, you've pretty much like seen all these books. So they're not gonna be any like big surprises if you've seen every single video, because I was really good about keeping up with content this month, which is really surprising because sometimes there'll be like 5 books that I haven't talked about, but I think there's only like 1 or 2, which is weirdly impressive. The first book that I read this month was for our book club for, what did I say? May, what comes before May? April. This is our April pick. I read it the very first 3 days of May because I kept putting it off because I had other things I was trying to finish. And that is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. This was a big win for me. I gave this a 4-star. I have a whole book vlog about it. It does have like full spoilers, so only watch that if you want spoilers. Otherwise, this was just such a fun fairy tale, magical, ethereal, mysterious story. It was just so much fun. And in this one, you're following our main characters who are just super mysterious and cool. One of the characters, the bridegroom, doesn't even have a name. Like, that's how like weird and I felt like I was like on something while reading this book. It's a very strange experience, but I also loved it. So it definitely earned that 4-star, and I would highly recommend this to anybody who wants a short but very, very interesting emotional read. Next up, we have 3 books from my new thriller vlog. So if you want to get more details about them, you can go there to check that out. But I read This Delicious Death, which is one of my more anticipated books of this month, but it only got a 3.5 because it didn't work for me. This is the same author as My Dearest Darkest, and that one's like a dark academia kind of weird story. And this one is more of a, it's three, was it three or four girls? Four girls who have lived through this like pandemic X type thing, and it has changed them into these zombie-like creatures. But they look totally normal until they get hungry. So the government has figured out a way to feed them using like synthetic product. And so they're finally allowed to go to this concert that's basically Coachella. And stuff starts happening. People start going missing. There's mysteries, etc. This one just didn't work for me as much. Like the vibes just weren't there for me, but I still like mostly had a fun time reading it, and there were a few like scary moments in there that I appreciated. The next one that I read for that horror thriller vlog was Lying in the Deep by Diana Urban. This was a huge disappointment. This was the one I was most excited about for that video, because this one is following a group of, they're not teenagers. They're like 18, 19, well, I guess that's teenagers, but they're like older. They're in college. I think they're in their 20s. But it's following a group of people that are going on this, like, what is it, semester? That's what we call it. They call it something else in the book. And they're going to be on there for 3 months, I think, something like that. And the main character that we're following just had her boyfriend break up with her, and she's devastated. And now her ex-boyfriend and her best friend are dating. And of course, they're all going on this semester thing together, and someone goes missing, and they have to figure out what's going on. And it sounds so good. I gave this a 1 star. I really hated this book. This is one of the worst books I've read in a while. I think this might be the worst one I've read this year so far. I don't know. I would have to check like my other, because I think I had one more 1 star, but I don't know. This is probably the worst book I've read this year. So very, very disappointed. This should have been one that I liked. I actually was okay. Like Diana Urban had a previous book that I read, All These Twisted Secrets, something like that. And I think I gave that a 3 stars. So I was like, okay, maybe as we go along, I'll like her books more. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse. So this author might have a separate Last Chance Author video, like what I did for Melissa De La Cruz, and where I pick up the new book, I guess, that comes out hopefully next year. So yeah, this was not a good one. I would not pick this one up. And the last one for that horror thriller vlog was the winner of the vlog, and it is The Lake House. This is a horror. I thought this was like a camping thriller, but it is not. This is like a paranormal horror that took me completely by surprise. I feel like a lot of hardcore horror fans are not gonna like this one, but I had such a fun time with this. If you like a little bit of mysterious, no romance really at all in your horror books, and you just want something quick and fun and fast, I would definitely recommend The Lake House. I know it doesn't have great ratings on Goodreads, but I pretty much just ignore horror ratings on Goodreads. Horror and sci-fi, I feel like, have such low ratings on Goodreads, but a lot of the books are actually really, really good, and people are just very, very picky about what specific horror and specific sci-fi they like. So I like this. This is definitely my brand of horror. I like thriller horror more than any other type of horror, and it was a lot of fun. I gave this one a 4. I don't know if I actually said that. I don't think I actually said that. I gave this one a 4 star. So the next one that I read, and I'm so excited I read it, it was for my Fairy Loot catch-up vlog, and this was the one I was intimidated the most about in that video, but I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I think it was also, I guess I liked Defy the Night better. I gave Defy the Night 5, but I gave this 4.5. The only reason I got 4.5 and not 5 is the first 70 pages, I tried to DNF it like 3 times, and I was like, you gotta push through. It's only 70 pages, you gotta push through. And then I loved the rest of the book. So much fun. So I really enjoy this. I can see why other people don't. The writing style is very unique and different, and it's a little bit detached from the characters, so it can be a little difficult to get attached to them, but I definitely found myself attached to the characters. But in this one, we're following our main character, who is literally the daughter of the moon goddess, and there are some issues where she wasn't supposed to be there, like she wasn't supposed to ever be born, so she goes and hides, and she ends up in the celestial kingdom where she trains beside like the crown prince, and it's just so much fun. And then it goes into like her later years as a fighter, and it's just so good. The fight scenes are really cool, the relationships are really good. I recommend this to fantasy readers. I do think this is an adult fantasy book, but for me this is almost young adult-esque, so just keep that in mind when you read it. The next one was the biggest challenge so far in reading for me, and it was my Wheel of No Appeal spin for March. So I've been reading this since March, and it is Priory of the Orange Tree. I am so glad I finished this book. I give it a 3.75. I don't know exactly how I feel about this. I still think it's too long. That's pretty much what I talked about in that video. That video is totally spoiler free if you want full, like, thoughts about it. I think it's too long. I think this should have been split up. I think this is 800 pages. This should have been split up into two 500-page books. And that way we could have got more explanation about the Priory, because I feel like it's called Priory of the Orange Tree and we barely, like, were in or talked about the Priory. That was, like, my biggest qualm with this. And I also just really hated one of the storylines. One of the storylines I was obsessed with, absolutely obsessed with. But there's two people in this book who I could not stand, and it never got better for me at any point in the book. So that was, like, my biggest issue with this. I am still excited to read the prequel, but I'm not going to be reading the prequel until the paperback comes out because I want it to match my paperback, and the only thing out right now is hardcover. So that kind of gives me some time to recover. But luckily, I do have that vlog where I talk about a lot of the stuff that's going on, still spoiler free, so I can go back and watch that myself before I read the prequel, so that's nice at least. Next one that I read is also part of that future Illumicrate video that hopefully is coming out in June, because I gotta start and finish The Empire of the Vampire, but I read The Wolf and the Woodsman. Ugh, I'm so disappointed in this one. This one ended up getting a 2-star because number one, I would not recommend this to anybody who is sensitive to animal death at all. There is a very traumatic scene in here that pretty much made the book spiral for me. Like, I was actually really enjoying it, and then that hit, and then the rest of the book I just didn't like. And I know that that's, like, ridiculous, but sometimes there's just, like, a scene in a book that just really ruins a book for you. And that happened, and I also thought the book kind of got a little repetitive towards the end. So it was that scene plus the repetitiveness in this book. But the first half of the book was really good. That's why I'm so disappointed in this. The first half was so written well because we're following a girl who lives in, like, an outskirts village. And her brand of magic, like magic that they're born with, this group has magic they're born with, etc. And they're considered like pagans or heathens, whatever, to the kingdom. And the kingdom only lets them live because they sacrificed a girl to the kingdom due to their powers, because they have different powers than the current kingdom does. So she's chosen, and she goes off with what they're called the Woodsman. That's like the kingdom's like small sect of super powerful fighters, I guess, whatever. So she goes off with the Woodsman, and for the first half of the book, it's like them going through the forest and traveling and learning about each other and doing that stuff. And it's so good. It's so interesting to like see the dichotomy between the two of them. And then once they get to the kingdom, I don't know, it just completely fizzles out for me, and they remove one of the characters almost completely for like half of the book. So I did not like that. It didn't work for me. Very, very disappointed in this one. Next, I read our book club pick for May. It is A House of Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, and I have really enjoyed the previous T. Kingfisher that I read, The Hollow Places. I would recommend anybody read The Hollow Places because I think it's a really good starting point for T. Kingfisher's books. I also liked What Moves the Dead. I know it's completely different. It's a completely different style of writing, style of genre. It's still weird like her other books, but it's definitely, the writing is completely different. But I also enjoyed that one. I gave it a 3.75. Really loved the ending of that one, and I'm really excited for the second one to come out. So, House of Good Bones, I was like, okay, I feel like I gotta like this one, but I've been hearing off and on things about it. And yeah, this one was an iffy one for me. I gave this a 3-star because I still enjoyed a lot of it, but some of the stuff of it didn't work. Although I just read a comment by one of my subscribers who does my book club, and they said they listened to it on an audiobook, and apparently it was like way less cringy. Because one of my biggest qualms was the weird humor in it. Like, normally I like the T. Kingfisher humor that I've had in the previous books. I did not like the forced humor in this. I was very disappointed in that. But she said it wasn't as bad when you actually listen to it for this book. So I think I might go back and actually re-listen. It's not a long book. It's not going to take me a while. So I think that's kind of on my list of things that I might do like while I'm at work, because it's not going to take a lot of brain power to re-listen to a book I've already read. So I'm kind of interested in doing that, and I want to see how it affects my rating. So hopefully I do that in June, and then in my wrap-up, you'll see that, maybe, potentially. But yeah, this one's following a main character who is an entomologist, archaeologist. I don't know the combined word. She says it in here. There's no way I can say that. And her dig has been postponed because they found human remains that need to be dated, etc. So she's going to go visit her mom and live with her mom for however long it takes between when the dig is like put back up. And it's her grandmother's house that the mom has moved into. The grandmother has passed away a couple years ago, And when she walks into the house, she notices that her mom has lost a bunch of weight. The house has been changed and rearranged back to the way that the grandmother liked it, and it's weird. So we're trying to figure out what's going on with that, and the house is being swarmed by vultures. So it's just a very interesting premise and a really interesting story, and I love this cover. It's so pretty, although I really like the UK cover too. I don't know which one I like better. But yeah, this is an interesting one. I would recommend reading it just for the weird experience, especially at the end, but I still don't know how I feel about it. Next, I started a book for my book of the month catch-up vlog, which is like, again, I said it before, you guys are trying to punish me. I gave you guys, my subscribers, a list of like options of what vlog they want to see next, and I kind of threw in at the very, like I did like booktube overhyped, which I did still end up doing like a singular book for that video. Worst rated books on my Goodreads, best rated books on my Goodreads, and they have to be on my TBR. And then I think I did one other one, and then I threw in there, I was like, oh, I have a bunch of the book of the months that I haven't read yet, and I really need to clear these out. So I was like, I don't know how many people would be interested in that. So I did a book of the month clear out, read, or get rid of, and that's what everybody picked. It was between that and the overhyped books, but that's what everyone picked. So I decided to start that with Priory. I haven't gotten far in that vlog, but I decided to start with Priory, and I'm really glad I did because this was a 4-star. I really thought I was going to like this. I picked it just because it was super short, and I was like, this is going to be one of those books that I'm either going to like right away or immediately hate. So this should be a really quick one to get through, and I ended up reading the whole thing. And I loved it. It was nothing like I expected. I'm not even going to tell you what this book is about because I feel like I could accidentally give something away by doing that. So this is a book 100% go into as blind as possible. This was so interesting and so good, completely different than anything else that I've ever read. And the last of the physical books that I read this month, Fourth Wing. This is a 5-star. I loved this book. There were definitely some like a little bit cringy things in here and some things that I didn't love, but overall I'm obsessed with this book, and I am so excited the second book is coming out this year. I think it just got announced. Iron Flame is coming out November 2023. I don't know, but I am like foaming at the mouth to get my hands on a copy of it. I am so excited. I can't believe that I liked it as much as I did, because normally I tend not to be on the hype train. I tend to avoid books for years if they're overhyped, but I was like, I gotta do it. I gotta check it out. Because especially if I didn't like it, then I could have sold my copy or given it away to somebody who can't get a copy right now, because you can't get a copy like this anymore. So that's kind of was my plans, but now I'm obsessed with it, and I'm really sad I don't have like the fancy ARCs, but there's no way I'm getting those. Those are so highly sought after. There's no chance, no chance. But anyway, this is following our main character Violet, who is, she never was supposed to be a rider. She was supposed to go to a scribe quadrant, but her mother decides that she's got to be a dragon rider, and so she enters the most dangerous quadrant available in the military and has to learn to be a dragon rider. And it's so good. It's a battle college, and there's death and romance and heartbreak, and it's like, is it funny? It is kind of funny at some points. So yeah, I really highly recommend this one to anybody who likes fantasy books. I was gonna say romance. This is technically a romantasy book. I'm not like the biggest fan of romantasy. To me, this is more fantasy heavy than on the, like, there's definitely a huge romance in this. It's a huge plot point, but there's not a lot of like sexually explicit content until the end, and it's super easy to skip over if you're not into that, because I know a lot of people don't read romantasy because they don't like that it's like immediately very graphic. This isn't like that. There are some cringy moments at the beginning, but it definitely waits till there's actually like an emotional connection for anything to happen. So that's kind of why I ended up loving this, because I don't like when there's like Insta stuff going on. This is so good. So yeah, this is my winner of May. I absolutely love this book, and this is probably going to be in my favorites of the year list. I feel like already I can tell that. Okay, now we are on to my EARCs. I did read 2 EARCs, and they're both graphic novels, which is really exciting because I was able to read them rather quickly, which is the opposite of what I do with regular EARCs, because I have a couple out. I have a couple that I'm reading right now, and it's just taking me forever to get through them because I like to read physically much more than I do like on my Kindle or on my phone or on my computer. So that's what's taking me forever with the other ones. But I did finish 2 graphic novel EARCs, and I have wildly differing opinions on both of them. So both of these are copies from NetGalley, and I had to get my hands on a copy of this, but I saw that Hyde is coming out with a graphic novel. So Hide, the graphic novel by Kirsten White, is coming out, I think, in September. Yeah, the expected publication is September 12th. And I really wanted to read this because I gave Hide, I think, a 2, and then I think I lowered it to a 1, like the novel. I really didn't like it. I thought it was missing a lot of imagery. I have a whole review on that if you want to go check that out. But this is also going to have a full review when we get into September, if I remember. I got to put it on my schedule. This was an interesting read. This was I gave it, it's a 2.5. It's a 2.5. Like, it didn't do that much more with the story, but the artwork and the missing setting, because like I said, Hyde, so if you don't know, Hyde is following a group of people who are supposed to be older. They still seem like teenagers. It's supposed to be an adult horror book, but it is what it sounds like. They're going to an amusement park and they have to play hide and seek for money, but it turns out something more sinister is going on and they're slowly disappearing. And a big problem with the original book, like I said, it just lacked the setting, it lacked the exploration of the amusement park, which would have been like the creepy part. So the graphic novel fixed that. It does some beautiful things with the setting, and it's so cool seeing the amusement park. It's super creepy, but I feel like it ruined another thing. Like, to me, it ruined the monster in it. It's like, they tell you there's a monster in the book, but it ruined the monster. So that was a big bummer for me. And I put that in my review. Like, it's on Goodreads and on NetGalley. That was a bummer for me. I think they made a mistake with the monster, but other than that, it was just fine. Like, that's a problem. They didn't really change anything. It's just the book over again. And it didn't work, just like it didn't work the first time. But I did bump it up because I did enjoy overall the story better than I did reading the novel. And then finally, last night pretty much, because I am filming this June 1st, last night I read the book North Ranger, and it was really good. I ended up giving it a 4-star. It's so interesting. So it's marketed as a young adult LGBTQ plus horror romance graphic novel, and it's so good. I highly recommend this one to anybody who likes Heartstopper. It's definitely got some trigger warnings, and I really appreciate it because the author of the book wrote on the front, like not the front cover, but like when you open the book immediately, or when you look at the EARC, immediately it says the trigger warnings, and there's definitely homophobia, there's definitely racism, and there's a lot of difficult things that they talk about. Death of family members. So there's a lot of difficult subjects, but at the same time, it's got that Heartstopper just like feel to it, where it's just like this emotional, just like, oh my gosh. It's just, I love the two main characters, and I just really, really enjoyed it. The only reason I took off a point or a star is because I felt like we didn't get to enjoy the relationship as much as I wanted to. Like, I liked the buildup of the relationship, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more of that. There could have been a little more tension. There could have been, because Heartstopper does a really good job of that. Heartstopper, because there's so many volumes, the first volume is able to give you that tension of the growing feelings. I feel like North Ranger would have been better as a multi-volume series, because it would have been able to explore everything so much more, because we had such complicated characters and such interesting relationships. So I feel like I wish it had been multiple volumes, or at least 2 volumes, and we could have gotten like the exploration of the beginning of the relationship, and then moving into some of the horror and because it's not really scary. It's more like our main character thinks something is going on and trying to figure out what's going on. So it's more, to me, it's more mystery. But they bring up like classic horror movies and stuff, which I really loved. I loved that. So I do highly recommend this one. This one's coming out, I think, June 6th. So I was really excited to get an EARC before it came out so I can recommend it to you guys. And I would definitely try this one out. This is a really, really exciting one, and I think it's a really good one for Pride Month. So that's really, really exciting. So that is everything that I read this month. I feel like it was a really, really good month, minus like a couple, because even like the DNFs, I didn't like hate them. I would say in this list, I really only disliked one book. These books just weren't for me. But man, what is it? Lying in the Deep, that was awful. But otherwise, I think I had a really, really good reading month. Read some things that I wasn't expecting to read. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of these, if you liked any of them, if you didn't like any of them, etc. If you want to read any of them, I would love to hear about that. But make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of this content and the vlogs that are coming out and unboxings that are sure to come this month. And that's all I got for you guys. Oh, I totally forgot about this. Yeah, make sure if you want to see unboxings, you subscribe, because I am getting getting Twisted Retreat boxes again. Well, at least for the next 3 months. So I ended up getting picked to be a rep for the next 3 months for Twisted Retreat, which I'm really, really excited about. I would love to keep getting Twisted Retreat, but I can't afford it. It's pretty expensive, and because I can't use a lot of Bath and Body products, and Unplugged and Twisted Retreat both do Bath and Body products, I don't get them anymore because for me it was becoming a waste of my money, and I can't do that. I can't do that, so I ended up switching over to getting Fox and Wit books. I'm really excited because I got a rep thing, and I'm so excited. So yeah, next 3 months we will be having Twisted Retreat unboxings because I think I'm getting May, June, and July's box. So I guess in June there'll actually probably be 2 unboxings, probably one at the beginning and then one at the end of the month, or 2 in July. I think they send theirs at the end. I forgot. Unplugged sends at the beginning, Twisted Retreat sends at the end. So probably doing May box in June, June box in July, and July box in August. So I'm very excited. Be on the lookout for those. And I have a rep code, I think. I'm going to put the rep code down below. I think you get 5% off of everything because I originally thought it was just subscriptions, but I think it's everything. Don't quote me on that. I'll have more information in the Twisted Retreat unboxings. But yeah, I'll put the rep code down below still and with more information down in the comments down below. So, like I said, very much enjoyed that. If you made it to the end of this video, make sure you put a stack of books, and I will see you guys in the next one.